Hi everyone, and welcome to the Game Breakdown Podcast, the podcast where we break down lots of different games and other topics now, apparently, as well. So today we're going to be talking about the best tactical espionage video game known as Metal Gear Solid.
I would say it's like the only espionage game, really, in my opinion. I mean, there was Splinter Cell, which was good, but I don't think it has anything on Metal Gear Solid.
No, not at all. I think like espionage is like being a spy, isn't it? Basically, so I suppose there's other games that fall under that bracket, but Metal Gear actually sells itself as a tactical espionage. Is it tactical espionage game or experience? Was it?
I think it's tactical espionage action.
Action
And that was like, basically,
team.
they said that that was how you'd genre it, if that makes sense. Purely
Okay,
because
how you categorize it?
That's a better
That's the
word.
word.
That's what I was looking
How you
for. All
genre
right.
it?
That's how you genre it. All right. Just because they basically didn't want it to be violent. Like the whole premise behind the game was it wasn't meant to be a violent game.
Oh, okay.
Even though there's like a torture scene in it, but like
I was gonna say it's not
yeah,
exactly the most tamest of games, is it?
yeah. But it was meant to be heavy on stealth, which it did well, to be fair. I think it's the only game that stands out to me, like I said.
I suppose it does give you really the option. You don't have to really kill anybody, do you? Well, I suppose the bosses you do, but the other enemies you don't have to actually kill anyone. So
Well,
I
you
guess that
can
makes sense.
tranquilize them and stuff, can't you, as well?
But I think that might be part two, though. I don't think you can do it in part one. Now I think about it. I think in MGS2 you start off with the M9, which is the blue tranquilizer gun, but I don't think you can tranquilize in the first one, can you?
No, I
No.
thought you could, but no, I don't think. I think you can in the remake, the Twin Snakes
Oh, a
remake.
good point. Okay, maybe that's why I'm getting
That's
confused.
why we're getting confused.
Right, there you go. So we might be able to do the remake. We'll check on that. We'll double check. I haven't played the remake in. I've only played the remake once, and I haven't played that in a really long time. But MGS on PS1, I had played it on my emulator. I want to say a year ago.
I've
I do
played
know
it a
it is.
lot. I've not played it too recently. I have played it this year. I was playing the Vita version,
Oh,
which
okay.
I love. Like the Vita version's pretty good,
Mm.
but there's something about it that's quite difficult with the fighting and the touch screen trying to get your menus up for like your weapons.
Yes, I think we were talking about this before. That this was the problem I had with portable gaming. I bought a Vita for this specific reason, not just for MGS, but I bought a Vita to play like old PS1 games, and that was my one problem: using the touch screen to navigate the menus of Metal Gear, because you have to hold them and then move your finger to flick them down, don't you? If I
Yeah,
remember rightly. Really, just not. It doesn't allow for easy gameplay. It's too cat-handed. I
yeah,
found.
yeah. Like I think you have to tap it once and then tap it off again, and
Mhm.
obviously it makes more sense to just hold it and then let go instead of having to tap it on and off.
Yeah.
It's just a stupid situation with it. However, it does look good. I think the visuals of it
Mhm.
actually hold up pretty well, in my
Yeah.
opinion. The music, the sound of the game will always stay with me no matter what.
Yeah. Definitely.
And I came across some interesting facts about
Oh.
Metal Gear Solid 1.
Do you want to hit me with the
Let's
facts?
hit you with some facts.
Hit me with the
So,
facts.
obviously, when that game came out, 3D gaming was like a relatively new concept.
Mm-hmm.
And the development team, in order for them to get their head around 3D levels, they built a lot of the levels out of Lego. And
Oh, I
that's
think I've heard
yeah,
this.
and that's how they like
Yeah.
designed it. And I thought that was like really interesting. I thought, how bloody fun is that? Like sat
Yeah.
in an office building all these levels out of Lego and being like, right,
That's really
that's how we're gonna
clever
do
as
it.
well. Like
Yeah.
to really get a feel of your environment.
Yeah. And also it was actually meant to be named Metal Gear Solid 3. But then Kojima decided that because the previous two games weren't well known enough, they just
Mm-hmm.
kind of scratched it, which I think works out better because it was such like a popular, astounding game. It makes sense now that it was number one because it was number three. I don't know. Do you think that would have hurt it?
To an extent, I do because
Yeah.
I feel like I. w- I mean, me as a gamer. I mean, at the time, I mean, when did it come out? 98, I
Yeah.
think. So I was like what 6 maybe. So that would have been I would have been like, oh, where's 1 and 2? It would have
Yeah.
made me think, and I wouldn't have realised that actually they were arcade games in the 80s, if you know what I mean.
You'd have felt like you'd missed something out of the story,
Yeah,
even
yeah, I
though
wouldn't have felt prepared.
I don't feel like they, I mean, I haven't played them, but from what I've seen, I don't think the story it's as tightly tied. Like I think it can be started off at that game, and you wouldn't feel like you were missing it off. You know?
I have played one of them.
Yeah.
Um, it's called. I think they're just called Metal Gear.
Mm.
I can't remember what it's called now. I had it on my emulator. I played it. The story's not as tight, and I don't really think I finished it, but I had a go at it. But to me, it didn't look like it was linking up too much.
Mm.
I think it's meant to be like a different, like all the Metal Gear games are just different scenarios. I mean, we talked about the timeline before, how wild the timeline is. Like the games go like Metal Gear 3, then actually Metal Gear 1, then 2, then 5, then 4. Like it's all over the place. So
Mm.
just like those ones, it's a random moment in time. I don't think it's necessarily a progression of like this leads on to the first PS1 game. It's like it's just a
Yeah.
part of Snake's journey, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what was your first experience? Like, how did you come across the game then?
How did I come across the game? So my brother, so I've got older siblings. My brother had it first on PS1. So he was playing it, and I saw what he was playing, and it looks interesting. And then I used to kind of like steal it from him because I wasn't allowed to touch it because I was only a kid. I wasn't allowed to touch it. I started playing it when he wasn't there, and I was hooked from the minute I started playing because it was such an unusual game. And like I wasn't really any good at it. I had to then replay it again when I was a little bit older, about 10 or 11, and it made a bit more sense to me. But I just found it to be such an interesting game, and I found the whole notion of you being a spy so appealing because, really, especially for our generation as gamers, at that time there wasn't a stealth game around, really, was there, on the PS1? Like where the objective was to not be seen and you had to hide and do all that kind of stuff. Usually it was like either run and guns or like racing games, or there was never like a stealth mission. It was all about fighting and big guns and stuff. So yeah, that was my first experience. I had my siblings had it, and I used to watch over their shoulder.
Mm.
And I thought this is really interesting. I really want to get involved in
Yeah, I
that. What
think
about you?
I think mine was the same, to be honest. My older sister, believe it or not, when she was younger, she used to really like games, and then she grew out of it, whereas I like obviously never did.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what specific part she was stuck on, but there was an area that she couldn't get past, and she didn't obviously ever want me to play it either. She was like,
Hmm.
no. And then one day I just started playing it and I got past this part and I was like absolutely over the moon that I'd done this part. I wish I could remember what part it was. I just ran downstairs and I was like, I've got past it. She was like, what? And then I just became like absolutely obsessed with it. Like you said, I'd never played anything like it.
Hmm.
I'd been, playing games like Croc
Yeah.
and all your
Like
kind of
Crash.
all you like your classic like childhood games.
Mm.
So when I played that, I was like, oh my god, like this has got some like substance to it, you know.
Hmm.
Um, and I just loved the whole codec system. I loved like the animations of it,
Hmm.
the music, the.
It's a very grown-up game, don't you think?
It is a really grown up game.
I think the notion of like, especially gaming in the 90s, games were for kids. And that was
Mm,
the general consensus, wasn't it? Like, oh, you're playing a game that's for children. So to have that game come out, because all of my PlayStation library, like you said, was Croc, Crash Bandicoot, Spyro, all that kind of stuff. So to have Metal Gear in my repertoire was like, whoa, what's this? A game that my brother was like, I don't really think you should be playing that. And I was like, why not? Yeah, the intrigue started. Why should I be playing this?
yeah, but I
It's for
think
kids.
exactly. But I think because they'd kind of styled it as like a stealth game,
Hmm.
and I mean, there wasn't really any gore in it. I don't
No.
remember there being any blood or anything like that.
There is a little bit, not a lot. If you're punched or shot, he does blood does spray like red cubes
I
go
tell you
around.
what, I've just remembered. You know when you go down the hallway, there's a part where you go down the hallway and Grey Fox has sliced up all the soldiers.
Yes. Oh, yes. That's
That
a really.
that pretty much caught me off guard when I was younger. I was a bit like, whoa.
Wait, is that part two?
No, it's part one. It's Metal Gear Solid 1. It's where you do the rocket as well and you go through the gas. There's like a gas chamber.
Oh, that bit. Sorry, there is a bit in part two. You know what I'm talking about, where there was a big bloody hallway as well.
Yeah, I think they've done similar things, you know. A lot of these games do. A lot of the games kind of carry over similar like
Well, part two was a callback in some ways. Anyway, off topic. But yeah, so yes, I remember it is. But there's that bit, but there is also the torture scene is quite gory in a sense. There's not blood or
yeah.
anything, but it's quite a traumatic scene.
Yeah, because you can hear Snake kind of like you have to really hammer that button to make sure
Yeah.
that he withstands the torture, and he's
Hmm.
obviously shaking and all that stuff. But then, like, yeah, at that time period, it was quite like I don't want to say shocking, but it was really because I'd never obviously played anything like that before.
Yeah, I would say
Um,
shocking and just quite
yeah.
um brave in a way. There's a lot of emotional grown up issues that were talked about in the game, considering again in that generation games were for kids.
Yeah, because you have a lot of conversations about Meryl's past and Snake's
Yeah.
past, and yeah, so they hit on some topics, don't they?
Yeah, I think it was really brave because it's a really convoluted story. It's really complex. It's very deep. It explores a lot of issues, and it's quite. It's a very serious story,
Well, it
and I
speaks about
think
war, doesn't it? So
yeah, it speaks about war and you know really the effects of war on the people
yeah.
and how war tears apart countries, tears apart people, tears apart nations and stuff. So I think that's quite a brave topic for video games in the 90s because it was explored like a film. It's almost like a playable film. It's not necessarily like a cartoony game. I
Mm.
think the big thing in the kind of mid 90s was like having a mascot for your console and making a platformer. And this game was so different. This wasn't a Crash, a Spyro, a Tomb Raider, or whatever. This was a really deep story driven game that explored serious issues that was rated like 15 or something. So it was, different for what was out there.
Hmm. I'd agree with that, definitely. And um, obviously there was like torture scenes.
Hmm.
Uh, Darb Chief had a heart attack, like right in front of
Yes.
you,
Yeah.
and it portrayed it by slowing it all down. And I also found the actual Metal Gear quite intimidating as a kid. It was just this huge army machine with
Yeah. Quite
guns.
frightening.
So, like, as a kid, it was like, oh my God, but it was also brilliant, because you're
Hmm.
like, oh my God, like, I ain't seen nothing like this.
Yeah.
So, it kind of balanced itself out. It was a bit like shocking, but I couldn't get enough of it. And I've played it countless times and still play it today. And I never get bored of it. I feel like it's so much replayability in it.
Hmm.
But saying that, um, I think the diversity in bosses as well, they carried that really well. Really good
Oh,
backstories.
yeah, let's talk about that because I think this is where like Kojima really shines because he has that weird mix of taking something that's very anime and cartoony and um completely not realistic whatsoever and yet makes it seem kind of normal and
Mm.
like oh okay that's fine. I mean like when you think about iconic bosses the first one that comes to my mind is probably the same one that comes to your mind is Psycho Mantis.
Yes.
So probably one of the most iconic bosses in the Metal Gear franchise, really, because he's your first proper boss, isn't he? He's the first one you kind of come across who's like a proper,
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think,
because
isn't
you
he?
you fight with Revolver um
Oh yeah,
in the room with the president's, I think he's the president. I'm pretty sure
yeah,
he
the
is.
president
He's covered
tied
in,
up.
yeah, tied up, got bombs on him. And that's kind of a boss, but it's not too intense. But then you get to Psycho Mantis's, and that's really intense because it's first of all, it's just creepy as fuck. Because he's
Hmm.
like, he can read your every move, your memory card, the
Yeah,
he controls Meryl. And I think, like you said, with it being an adult game, you almost start to feel, as a kid, I did at least, I felt a lot of responsibility towards Meryl.
yeah, I did about keeping her safe.
Exactly. So when she got
Hmm.
took over, I was like, hold up, what you doing? Do you know what I mean? I was like,
Yeah,
no. And then she starts attacking you and you start to take a step back. And you're like, oh my God, she's hurting me. But yeah, he stands out, doesn't he? He's a good
I
one.
think he definitely does. I think when you think about Revolver and the fight you have with Revolver, at the end of the day, Revolver is a normal person in one way. Like his fight is not really. You can get away with saying Revolver is a very good gunslinger. It doesn't look superhuman. He's not defying physics in any bizarre way. Okay, I think he can make some bullets bounce and stuff, can't he? But he's not flying around the room. He's not, Dragon Ball Z style shooting up the place and flying over.
No.
Like he seems like a regular person that's extremely skilled with guns, whereas Psycho Mantis actually blends the normal and the paranormal. Like he's where you think, right, this could be another gunfight, and then suddenly it's like he can read your mind, he can control other people, he's telekinetic, like he can fly. There's things that are just really out there and wacky, but I don't look at that and think, oh, what a cartoony villain. Like I look at him with like quite a bit of fear and think, oh shit, like he's I'm actually quite worried of how I'm going to get this fight done. And he doesn't look like crazy cartoon. He looks like a serious enemy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's not like, oh,
And it's
what
his
now? Someone can
voice.
fly.
It's his voice because
Yeah,
he's got a mask on and he's just like, and
that
he's
like
like,
Darth Vader breathing
Snake.
thing.
Yeah, it's like, Snake, I can read your mind and all this shit. And you're like, oh my God. It's great.
He does that thing as well because he reads your memory card, and he tells you if you've had certain Konami games or whatever. He can tell you what games you've been playing. But there's
Mm.
another thing he can do. I think it's so there's like loads of traps set throughout the game. If you don't spot them and you fall for them, he says things like you're a careless player. Or I was always, this is just like me in life in general. I check things 110 times because I'm like neurotic. But in
Mm.
the game, I'm the same. I was always like, that looks like that could be a bomb. That looks like that could be a trap. And I remember he says I think he says something like you're very skilled, or you're very cautious, or something. He says, and I was like, oh my god, that is me. And at
Yeah.
the time, I was like, oh, I wonder if he just says that. But then I've played it before, and I've been really reckless, and he does say you're a reckless character. Like if you die more than 5 times or something, he says something like you're very reckless and you throw caution to the wind. So it's cool how like he comments on your gameplay, the other games you've got, and just it seems to know a lot about you. It's quite freaky.
Yeah, because it kind of merges the game with real life, doesn't it? And he
Hmm.
speaks about things that, like, obviously only you know because it's like your console. So
Yeah,
you're kind of like, okay. And he makes the controller vibrate. You have to switch controllers.
yeah.
Yeah. So I think for me, like, out of the entire game, he always like really, really stood out. And then I also found Sniper Wolf to be a really emotional story as well.
Yeah, I think
Um,
that both of them have a really emotional story. I mean, just very quickly to say as well, he's the only boss I know of in computer gaming at that time who would mess with your hardware.
yes.
There was no other situation that I've come across, and this is typical Kojima, where like he thinks of the unthinkable,
Yeah.
because, like you said, you had to move your controller from controller port 1 to port 2. He could read your memory card. He could make your controller vibrate. Didn't he do like there's a second time they do that in the game. I'm trying to think when Snake is hurt. I think if you call Mei Ling or call somebody, they say hold your controller to your arm, and they make it vibrate, and they say we're healing your arm. Just things like that are so interesting because you would never think that that can have an effect on your actual gameplay.
But he always thought, like, especially in that game, 2 steps ahead of the player. Because
Yeah.
if you was to call Mei Ling multiple times and then you call again because you actually want to save your game, she'll
She
be
would
like, stop
refuse.
calling me.
Yeah.
You know? And it's like he knew that people were going to start doing that and they were going to start
Hmm.
typing random numbers in and things like that. Um so yeah, again, it's just like always a step ahead. But
Well, that's another thing with the numbers. Sorry, you just mentioned the the one that always got me, and this even got me as an adult when I replayed it because I forgot about it. When the colonel says to you, "You need to meet, my associate Meryl. Give her a call. Her codec numbers on the back of the box." I cannot tell you how long it took me. I was going through my inventory. Where the fuck's this box? I was looking on the walls. I was looking everywhere. And it was only as an adult, I just Googled it. But as a child, I remember I literally picked up the case and I was like, is this it? And there was a random number on the back. And I was like, no, that's really silly. It wouldn't be there. And then it is. So the fact that you have to pick up the game box to find something to help you in the game, like even just that. I mean, it sounds really simple and really obvious, but that was kind of like, kind of mind blowing. A bit like, oh shit, like everything's involved in this.
yeah, it doesn't hold your hand. And I think that's what
Not at
stood out
all.
to people. The game
Hmm.
I thought was quite difficult. Like,
Hmm.
I mean, obviously, I've played it millions of times, but going back to it now, I've realized just how kind of tricky it is. I mean, there's that first fight with Raven outside in the
Yeah,
tank.
in the
That's
tank.
difficult.
That's really hard.
Yeah. And you don't realize it because as a kid, you kind of, I guess you just do it, didn't you? But like
That's where you can go
thinking
through the
back,
vents and stuff, isn't it? And you have to. Am I thinking of the right bit?
no, you're outside. You have to
Oh
aim
no!
your
Yes, you have to aim your.
grenades.
Yes, that is hard. That is really hard.
Yeah.
That's where you've got to try and get them in the little hole at the top, isn't it, and stuff.
Yes.
Yes, I remember. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That is hard. But they're all. I mean, like, so that's a really tricky one. Sniper Wolf, as you were saying before, that is quite a hard boss fight
Yeah,
if you
because
don't know what you're doing,
you have there's
even if
like
you
two
do.
parts to it, isn't there? You
Yeah.
fight a that's a funny thing actually as well. I'm going to keep going off topic, but basically when you do fight, you can shoot the rats, and then everyone will call you up
Yes.
and they'll be like, "We don't agree with why are you shooting the rats for?"
Yeah.
Basically, which is really funny. I thought, well, it's not funny, but it's interesting.
Yeah.
But you fight with her there, and then obviously you go outside, and you then turn into her actual prey because you're outside. You can't really see her because she's a really good sniper, and
Mhm.
you're fighting in the middle of nowhere. And then obviously when you do kill her, it's just a really emotional scene.
It is. Yeah.
She's kind of laying there, and that like the huskies or the wolves, or they all kind of run up to her, and they're a bit sad, and then he just puts the handkerchief over her face, and you're like, you know what, this is quite, I did get really emotional during my playthrough of Metal Gear Solid 1.
Quite deep. I mean,
Yeah,
what's quite sad about her character is that it's almost like she doesn't care who you are in a sense. She's not trying to kill you because you're Snake or because you're after Metal Gear. For her, it's just the game of being like, who can get. It's very much cat and mouse with her, isn't it? I mean, she says the entire time, doesn't she? It's just that really iconic line, which is like, I've got a love letter for you. And do you know what that love letter is? It's a bullet from my gun to your heart or something, which is like meant to be a very famous film quote. But the way she talks to you and the way she treats it, she's not really trying to stop you from Metal Gear. She probably doesn't give a shit. It's the fact that for her, it's about the hunt. She is the wolf. You
she's
are
in
her
love with
prey.
him. She's in love
Yeah,
with him because he's the prey, and
yeah.
she's obsessed with him.
Hmm.
Um, which
Although
again,
that's also quite a gory scene. I'm just thinking because when you first meet her, Meryl walks out first and she fucking shoots Meryl to shit in that, doesn't she? She shoots her apart and Meryl collapses. And do you have to drag her away, or you have to dodge? And I remember Meryl's health is dropping. I'm trying to think back now. Isn't Meryl dying at this point, and you've got to try and hurt Sniper Wolf enough for her to go away while Meryl's health is dropping and she's
yeah.
crawling away? That's quite an intense scene. Like,
Yeah, it is. It is because you start to realize that like Meryl's kind of again, she's like getting
ki-
destroyed, and
she's
you're
kind of
you're
green.
responsible. Yeah, she
Hmm.
is. She's. I mean, I love Meryl. I thought I don't. I
Hmm.
had a soft spot for Meryl, but when you think about it, she's a bit of a liability, to be honest. 1 minute
She isn't
she's
she?
she's getting controlled, and then she's getting shot up by a sniper wolf. But
I think that was what's quite scary about Meryl because she's all bark and no bite. Like she's got all the guts, but she's actually not got a lot of the skill. And when you feel responsible for her, she's getting shot up by Sniper Wolf. There's bits later on in the game where she tries to be like, big with you, and you walk into Psycho Mantis and he controls her and she ends up getting herself hurt again. It's like every opportunity you're with her, she's in danger. And you feel the need to protect her, but you also feel the need to turn around to her and be like, go home. You're making this really hard for me. Go home.
yeah, exactly.
I love it. But Sniper Wolf, I really do enjoy her. I think she's a really interesting character with an interesting backstory. And like the way that you interact with the wolves around her as well, I think that's quite clever. There's like the portion of the game where if like Snake's classic box that he wears to hide in, you can have the wolves like basically piss on the box and you get the scent of the wolves, and then you can walk through their hideout, the den, with the box on and they won't touch you because you smell like one of them, which I
Yeah,
think
which
again
is
is a really clever thing.
it's a really clever thing, and it's actually a really difficult section to get past unless you get
Hmm.
pissed on because you just get destroyed all the time. And Meryl's just there, like, Snake, what are you doing? While you're like getting absolutely attacked.
That winds me up because she's watching you get hurt and she's fine. That's another thing. Can't you get her handkerchief as well? Because the wolves love her, don't they? So later on, you can get her handkerchief and you can smell of Meryl, and the wolves don't touch you.
That might, yeah, possibly, probably, even.
I think you can. Yeah, Meryl's handkerchief. I'm sure it is.
There's all
Someone will
these little
correct me
tricks.
if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
The thing is, though, that's the thing. This game has so many different aspects to it, like the unlockables, the fact that Meryl's important to the wolves,
Hmm.
just all these kind of little things. And it's like, there's just a lot going on with that game,
For
considering
a
how old it
PS1
is.
game,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's insane. It's actually insane. But I think their environments as well. One of my favorite things is just the environments. I just think they're built up. They all look different. Not one of those levels really looks the same, and
no,
you get a different emotion with each one. You get that suddenly you're trapped and you're getting gassed out unless you shoot these things, but you can't escape unless you shoot the things. But it takes you a while to figure it out.
hmm,
Um, your footsteps can be loud and the guards can hear you.
yeah,
You get locked in a prison cell and you can put ketchup on yourself.
I
Like
love that bit.
there's a different feeling, especially like going back to when I said with Grey Fox who like cuts up the enemies. That really like freaked me out as well. Like there's just a lot of emotion with the levels.
Hmm.
and they just portray him really well, to be fair. They did some really cool tricks because obviously it's an older game. I was watching how it was made and things like that. And
Hmm.
in the scene where you fight Grey Fox with and you meet Otacon,
Yeah,
there's a window there, but it's meant to be a mirror. But because obviously technically you couldn't actually do that, they had to build a separate room behind it and add like emissive lights so that it looked like it was reflecting and it was a mirror, but it wasn't. It was just a room. And it's
that's
just
really
little,
clever.
yeah, it's just little things like that. You're like, that's so clever, you know?
I feel like that's what's missing from a lot of games today, though. That like ingenious thought and like I don't know, MGS1, I really felt like whoever created that, whoever those people were, they poured themselves into it. Like everything was done. There's not you could never turn around whether you're a gamer or not and say that's really sloppily made. Like there's no way you could say that. Everything is done so meticulously and everything's done with a purpose. Nothing in that game is done by mistake or just because it looks cool. It
Mm.
always has a reason behind it. Um yeah, that fight with Grey Fox, I'm just thinking back now, it's all coming back to me. Like that is a really bloody hard fight.
It's intense, isn't it? It
It's
is.
really intense.
Because you've got to backflip all the way. You've got to be just as quick and you've got to kind of spot where he is because he's invisible. He can go invisible because he's,
It's
you know.
going invisible. It's the fact that you have to time it and you almost have to run away from him when it looks like you could carry on hitting him because you can't get that extra hit in because if you do, you then open yourself up to more
Exactly.
beatdowns.
Exactly. It's all
And then like
timing.
he's going invisible, he's controlling the computer around you. There's like oh also side note, in that room, in the fight with Grey Fox, there's actually on the PS1 version, you can go and find a little PS1 behind one of the desks. But when you play the Twin Snakes remake that came out on GameCube, you can instead find a GameCube, I think it is, and a little Mario and a little Yoshi. And if you shoot
So
them, it gives
cute.
you a little life.
Oh, it does the little sound, and it's like,
It goes bloop, bloop,
oh,
and your health goes up a little bit.
it's that's another thing. You could bloody smoke in that game, and
And
it would
that
knock your health down.
it would knock your health down, which is so clever. But it also, again, it has a purpose. So it's for when you can't see the lasers. There's that bit when you're in that room and the colonel goes, "If only you had some kind of mist or whatever," and then you light a cigarette and you can see them all. But then your health drops and you think, oh, like it's not just again, it's not just a cigarette to look cool. Oh my god, I can make my character smoke. Like, there's something behind it. I think it's just so ingenious.
Yeah, really, really ingenious. Nothing's the same. Everything, all the characters have really in depth backstories. The
Mm.
gameplay itself, actually, let's talk about that because I feel
Hmm.
like the way it handles back then, obviously, we're used to really modern controls now, but majority of it was done on like a D-pad and you didn't really have like analog stick. You couldn't really control your camera. You
It was
kind of,
Tank, wasn't it?
yeah, essentially,
Yeah,
yeah,
like
it was,
Resident Evil almost.
yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much, yeah. I mean, it felt a little bit more fluid, but
Hmm.
again, the controls are like really simple
Yeah.
and it never felt like hard to play, you know,
No.
like considering how drastic it is. I mean, you had to you could crouch and crawl under things, you could go up against the wall, peek around corners, and like
Hmm.
you could do so much on such a simple control scheme.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
yeah, so I mean, we're just singing its praises, but I honestly can't think of anything that I would say was bad about it.
No.
Maybe it's a nostalgic love for it. Maybe someone has different ideas who's listening and think, well, actually, I thought that was awful, that bit. But yeah, I can't think of anything about it that I don't like.
No, I mean, there probably is someone out there who has a problem with it, but they're wrong. Do you know what I mean? Because,
Quite frankly, you're wrong.
quite frankly, you're wrong. Because when I play that game now as an adult, like the last time I played it fully, all the way through, really concentrating on it, was about a year ago. And even now, in, all right, 2019 at the time, I wasn't like, oh, do you know what? If only this was like this. Like, there's nothing. It plays so well. And I think actually that kind of brings us to why we even started talking about Metal Gear today. So,
Mm,
for those of you who are unaware, because the second I saw this, I sent you about 100 screenshots,
you did.
there was a rumor going around that there was going to be a Metal Gear remake for the PS5. And there was I love it whenever they get a hold of these stories, there's always like random fake screenshots that have been in quotes leaked or something. There's always like a source, an undisclosed source has said, and that spread like wildfire. And it spread so much that it got to the point where I was like, do I believe this could be
Yeah,
real? Because like big people picked it up, like IGN picked it up and Gaming Bible and like people who like are somewhat reputable sources. I
yeah.
was like, oh shit, like could this be happening? And I remember I texted you the screenshot when I saw it at like 1 a.m. And I was like, oh my God, can you imagine?
Uh,
But sadly, it turned out to be something very different. Which would you like to explain what it was?
yeah. I mean, okay. So basically, they've obviously just ported it onto
Mhm.
GOG.com. I never know if I'm saying that right.
I think
Um,
GOG, GOG, whatever.
yeah. They've ported it on there. Like it's not a remake. But saying that, because when you told me, I was literally kind of like, no. I was like, it
Yeah.
can't be true. Like you cannot
Mhm.
be telling me this is going to happen because obviously we love this game so much,
Yeah.
and you're like, I can't believe it. But then, I mean, they sometimes do things like this where they release content and it's a lead up to a remake,
Yeah.
which mate, I my head would explode if it's legit, you know? And I would think, why are you hiding it? Tell the people. Because the people need to know because we're
Tell the
ready for it.
people.
Tell the people. And I mean, yeah, I know you got a remake on GameCube, but like, can you port it at least to Switch so we can play it on a more modern kind of thing, you know?
Well, the thing upset me about that, just to like interrupt you very quickly, is the fact that that was a PlayStation game and suddenly
Yeah.
it was remade on the GameCube, and I was like, oh well, cool. Like that really upset me because I couldn't then play the remakes and have a GameCube.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay, lovely, thanks
It's
for that.
it's so yeah, the remake itself, like I've seen a lot on it. I never played it myself, but I've
Hmm.
seen loads on it because I'm always like anything Metal Gear, I'm like, let's investigate.
Yeah,
And it's very different. Like essentially it's the same, follows the same sequence, but the cutscenes, the music, the sound effects, the voices, they're not the same. And it's like it's not got that grittiness to it. Like
yeah, 100%. I've actually played it because I have my emulator. I have played it. The only way I can explain to you, and I think I've said this to you before, is it's everything's very soft, and I think this is like a trope of GameCube games of that era. Their way of making games look more high def, graphically improved, whatever you want to call it, was making everything rounded and everything soft. And obviously, the PS1 was an older console, so of course it wasn't as graphically up to date as the GameCube. Fine, but even if you take away the PS1 style graphics aside, it's a very harsh game. So everything is very rigid, everything's very shaped, everything's very square or sharp. But in the GameCube version, everything is very soft. But it's very soft to the point where it loses the, like you said, the grittiness of the game because
too clean.
it's far too clean. Everything is rounded. Everything is all. It looks like, in like old sitcoms or old programs on telly, and you could tell that they've like smeared Vaseline on the lens to give it that blur, so everyone looks 10 years younger. It's like that. The whole game feels like you're watching it through like a blurred filter, almost like on Photoshop when you do like Gaussian blur, whatever it's called. It's like that. Everything is so soft and pretty, and it doesn't look like a Metal Gear game. The whole thing we've been talking about this episode is that it's such a gritty, deep game, and it's got this really soft, pretty, shiny paint on top, and it doesn't look as good.
Yeah. So you weren't a huge fan of the Twin Snakes, were you?
No, I was happy that it was remade and I was able to play it like with up to date graphics at the time. Not at the time, but with better graphics. But it's a no from me.
Yeah. It's mental how a remake that can be so true yet so not similar. You know,
Yeah.
it's like it's so close, but then it just kind of misses the mark for me personally. A lot of people prefer it because you have the first person kind of aiming system to it. Obviously,
Hmm.
it is more cleaner and upgraded and all that, but it just didn't do it for me. Didn't cut the block. So
No,
that's
and
my
I'm petty
opinion.
enough. I'll be like, no, that one thing's wrong, so I'm
Yeah,
out.
yeah. That one thing's wrong. Like meleeing sounds weird as fuck. I'm over it. You
Yeah,
know.
that's it. Oh, that's like the wrong shade of blue. No, I'm out. Like that's my level of pettiness. So it doesn't take much disappointment when you make a game. I mean, hello, you've heard my opinions on the Resident Evil remakes. So
Yes.
one slight slip up, and there's my opinion that you didn't ask for. The basis of this
Dun-dun-dun.
very podcast.
It's true. It's true. A lot of opinions.
It is. Although I'd be really down for a PS5 remake. I mean, Konami, if you're listening, if you could make up with Kojima, because that's one reason I knew it was fake, because no way Kojima was going to work with you again after the whole hullabaloo that took place,
Scandalous.
the scandal that happened with the two of you. But if you could please just fix whatever stupid issue you've got and actually remake it onto the PS5, I'd really appreciate that, actually.
I honestly like I know for well that if there was ever like a true kind of remake of it, I would throw every single penny I own at that. I would get the collector's edition, and I think loads of people would,
Oh,
because it would just
100%.
be like, oh my god. But there was a group of people that did start to remake it in Unreal 4.
Yes, and they got cease and desist, didn't
And
they?
look, how amazing did it look? They were
Yeah.
really going step by step, really
Hmm.
true. Then it got cut off. Maybe that's the thing, because like, hang on, we're working on it, or they just don't want people to stand on their toes. I don't know, but
Well, the rumor I heard is that Konami sent them a cease and desist, and they were later hired
mate, don't
into development.
even. I just
Yep.
got shivers.
You just get shivers as your fire alarm went off behind you. You got
I'm so sorry. I need to change the batteries, but who really changes their batteries? I'm joking. People change
people
your
who
battery.
want to live.
Change your
Yeah.
fire alarm. Change your fire alarm battery.
If you could do that.
It's just my opinion, okay? I'm sorry.
Just my opinion. I don't change who changes fire alarm batteries. No, you need to change that. Yeah, the rumor I heard is that they were sent a cease and desist, and they were then hired into either Konami's situation or Kojima's situation. Someone hired them because, regardless of whether it was copyright infringement or whatever, it looked bloody good. It was obviously very talented to be able to do that. So someone snapped them up. But what were they snapped up for is my question. Were they just run-of-the-mill developing employees? Like, hell, jump onto this game we're doing. Or was it like, we see what you're doing there and we're a fan. So let's
Yeah.
secretly do this for the next 5 years.
Imagine though, just imagine. I mean, the reveal they could do would just be insane,
Oof.
and everyone would just stop. Like, you just have like the alert sound, wouldn't you? And it'd be like
Yes.
dun, 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 and everyone would be like, no way! Like, oh, I'm getting excited, and it's not even a fucking thing. Why do I do this to myself?
This is the one thing. I mean, that noise. Let's just for a second divert. That is one of the most iconic noises in video game history. And I see people use that noise on random YouTube videos or whatever, and I don't think they know where it comes from. They know it is that little like, oh, that alert sound. No, that is the Metal Gear Solid sound of being spotted.
Yeah.
And that is actually, I see if you can hear it. That is my text tone.
It's
Iconic.
so good. We
Every
might have
time
to
I get
put
a
that
text
in,
plays.
like HD version in, because everyone needs to listen to it.
We'll edit that in post.
In post.
We'll speak to that giant production company that's in charge of us and they can do it in post. But yeah, that's another thing. This game has created so many iconic sounds, iconic soundtracks. To be honest with you, does it need a remake? No. The original plays still beautifully at this day and age. It still looks great. It still sounds great. It still plays great. It's still a great game. The story's still impeccable. There's nothing wrong with that at all. I'm just being greedy because I'd like to see it in full HD PS5. It's a little bit like the Final Fantasy VII remake. All the fans wanted, everyone said, even keep the glitches, no one cares. Just make it with today's graphics. You can do whatever, keep it exactly the same. Even keep the same botched script that makes no sense, not translated properly. Just make it HD. And that's all I really want for Metal Gear. I just want that.
Yeah, I don't want them to. Yeah, I know. I often say I don't play games particularly for graphics, but when you look at what's achievable now and what, I don't want to say Kojima because he might. I mean, obviously he's going to be on it in some respects, but
because he's listening.
Hi, hey Hideo, can you just do that? Hi, but when you put like compare it to games like Death Stranding, that game is mental. It looked more real than like real life. Like the quality of it was something else, and I just think that game back in the day looked awesome, anyways. And with kind of like mocap and things like that, the amount of detail they could go into would just be insane. Like. And that's why I want it. I think it's important that people get the opportunity to play it, because a lot of more like newer audiences will most likely only really ever have played either Metal Gear Solid 4 or 5, unless they kind of look back for it.
Yeah.
So to bring that true experience like into the future would just be brilliant. I'm such a fangirl. My God, I can't even cope. I've just realised how excited I am over it.
The smile is ear to ear. But also on top of that, if they are Metal Gear Solid 4, 5 players, I've not played 5, as I famously say all the time. It's sitting in cellophane. I do have it. It's sitting there on the shelf. It's gathered a layer of dust, and I just haven't got around to it yet. I'm very busy. I'm very busy. But those games are completely different to what Metal Gear 1 is. I would say, just to go briefly off topic, Metal Gear Solid 2 is still in the vein of very similar games. They've just stepped everything up a bunch. Metal Gear 3, it changes a little bit more, and 4 is not completely, but vastly different. And then five is like a different. Well, from what I've seen of five, it's not the same. It's like an open world game. So if you only know four and five Metal Gear, you know nothing of its origins really. If you've never played the first one, you don't know what the original intention of these games were and how they pushed the boat in their own little way back then. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
I think if someone's only played Metal Gear 1 and then was to pick up Metal Gear 4, it'd be like, whoa, what happened? Not that it got worse, because it didn't get worse, but it's just a completely different style of playing. It's not as, I feel like the emphasis on stealth went down a little bit.
I was gonna say it's not tactical espionage anymore.
No.
No, like number five, I've played probably about I'd say I played about 30% of it.
Hmm.
And it's very like, yeah, it's very open world. It's very kind of there's obviously a story to it, but you can pretty much land anywhere. You can
Hmm.
it's there's strategy in it. There's just it's purely you could just run around for hours if you wanted.
Yeah.
Um, it doesn't have that really linear stealth aspect to it. And they I mean, obviously, I've not finished it. The beginning of the game's absolutely fantastic, and you really feel like it is. But then when you get into the game, it's a bit like it's not giving me what I want. That it's not giving me the same feelings I had before. It's a brilliant
Yeah.
game, and what I've played, I have thoroughly enjoyed it. But if I was to put it back to back with Metal Gear Solid 1, 2, and 3,
Hmm.
I'm like, oh, but you're not quite doing it for me anymore, which is
It's just not
sad.
the same thing. It's just the nature of the beast. It's evolved. Like it's evolved, and people can argue whether they think it's evolved in the correct way or not because that comes down to your style, your preference.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it has drifted from the original Metal Gear formula. I mean, four is the same. I know I've not played five, and I know you've not played four, but I have. But four is very different in the sense that it's not necessarily open world. It's still quite linear, but it's different. It's more. It's evolved with the story, but also there's a war happening around you, and it's more um what's the word I'm looking for? It's more of a fight. It's not necessarily about always doing lots of stealth. You try because Snake is aged and you're trying to not get in as much conflict as you can. But there is an element of I need to buy some more weapons. I need to assault this group of people. Like it's quite a war heavy run and gun kind of game. It's not as
Mm.
stealthy as the other ones. Personally, I find so it has like evolved a long way, and I feel like a remake of the original could really show and bring back the tactical element of it and show you this is what a true Metal Gear game should look like. Because I've only ever played the old 80s ones and the early 90s ones once or twice, many, many moons ago. And they're not really tactical either. They're only little like arcade 8-bit sprite games. You know what I mean? It's very much run and gun. But
Yeah.
still, I mean, there's that really famous scene though in the 8-bit one, which I think they brought back. I can't remember which Metal Gear they brought it back for. Where you're in the when you're in the lift and there's the people in the camo suits. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
Okay, there's a scene in the old ones where you go in as Metal Gear and you as Metal Gear. I always go to call him Metal Gear. Where you go in as Snake and you go into the lift and you press the button and you've just been in like a massive fight. So it seems really eerie that this lift is empty. And you press the button and your character can walk around in the lift. There's nothing happening. And then out of nowhere, you're attacked by four people who are in camo suits and you can't see them.
Oh.
And it's quite an intense scene because you have to like. Do you know what I'm talking about
Yes.
now?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about now. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I remember that now.
So
Yeah.
that's in the 8-bit games. I believe it's also one of the 3D ones. Is it the first one or
It's
the
the
second?
second one.
Is it the second one?
Yeah, it's the second one because the lift takes like forever.
Yeah, and you're wondering why it's taking so long, and all of a sudden, shit
Yeah.
gets real.
Yeah.
Like it all happens. Yeah. So like, even I forgot what I'm saying now. What was I even saying? Sorry, I've like gone a blank. Anyway, so what I think I was saying was, yeah. So those kind of iconic scenes and things, it'd be so good to see that translated into today's graphics and show that how it's a really what the original Metal Gear game would look like, what a proper tactical espionage game would look like, and how they could try and surprise you in different ways. We've spoken before about the fact that the hardware is so different now. Obviously, if you were to fight Psycho Mantis, you can't just pull your controller out of controller port 1 and put it into
Mm.
2 because obviously that's not really a thing anymore. But they could do something with the wireless controller. I mean, like the PS3 6-axis. Do you remember we played Heavenly Sword and you could control things with your controller? There might be things they could do in that way or affect your hardware in other ways. I think there's so much more room for them to be inventive and creative. So if
Mm.
Kojima could just, oh, and another thing, if he could make up with David Hayter, because if they're going to remake it without David Hayter, I'm not interested. Again, I'm petty, but that's the truth.
You are petty, but I think a lot of people can agree. Like
I
he's
didn't
my
like
favorite.
Ground Zeroes, did you? Because the second Snake opened his mouth, I was like, nope. Forget the game. The game could have been brilliant, but the second Snake opened his mouth and it wasn't David Hayter, I was like, no, I've
But
checked out. Sorry.
that's the thing though, isn't it? I think it was such like a shock to people to hear the voice was different.
And it was so
And
different.
as good of as an impression it is, you
Yeah.
can tell like it's, it's not the same. And
Hmm.
David Haight is important to a lot of us as fans because it's like that's Snake. And
Hmm.
even now, like he has it on his Twitter, he's like, I'm the Snake. Like we're like,
Yeah.
we know you are.
We know you
So
are.
yeah, if I feel like he would have to be in it. I mean, would I take a bullet just to have the remake? Probably, but that's me. I'm desperate, mate.
You're desperate. I'm
I'm
shaking my
desperate,
head
mate.
because
But
those things affect
David,
me.
David, come on, be part of it.
Dave,
Come on, Dave.
Dave, mate. I just think it's those little things that make it. And you can call it nostalgia, you can call it whatever you want, but he voiced them for 1, 2, 3, and 4. So, and all the spin offs, which is like Peace Walker and all that kind of stuff. So, there's like a big section of the game. So, this is a really established character. It's not like Tomb Raider where she's just got a British sounding accent and you can kind of interchange it with a couple of different women who sound very similar. Like, David Hayter's got such an iconic voice, and Snake is very vocal. When you think back to people like Lara Croft, in the first game, she wasn't massively vocal. I know we've joked about some of the crap she comes out with, like walking around her mansion, like, sorry about the boxes, I've just moved in, like stuff like that. But like, you don't remember her voice, you remember the funny things she said. Whereas in Metal Gear, Snake's voice is like ingrained in my brain.
Yeah,
And he's the only like voice actor that I know the name of, video game voice actor that I 100% know his name because it's emblazoned in massive letters every time you play it.
mm,
Snake Plissken, David Hayter. Like it always pops up.
yeah. He's definitely exactly. Like no one can replace him. He's like he's like an icon
Yeah.
for the games. So he would have to be in it. Um, but yeah, it would just be weird, wouldn't it? I don't know. My main concern is with the remake is if they change it too much. I know they can do different things now, and like there's a lot more you can do with it. But like you said, I think bringing like the real world into your game was a huge thing for me, especially when
Hmm.
you were fighting like Psycho Mantis. Um, so we'll see. We'll see.
We'll see. We can only pray. I would like to see it remade, but again, purely like graphically. I'm not like, oh god, they need to fix so many things about that game. It was so bugged because they didn't. It was fine. It still plays well. I don't really know of any game breaking things that would really, really, really wind me up. Like I've not got any grudge to that game at all. I think it's literally. I'm just gonna say it's literally a masterpiece.
It's like a 10 out of
Like
10. I can't
yeah,
think of
hundred
anything that
percent.
I would. That yeah, there's not one thing where I'd say, if they do remake it, I'd like it if they made the radar better. Like, no, it was great. Like, it was
Yeah,
simple. It was the menu, the music. Here we go again, but it was. There was
it
nothing bad
was.
about it at
Everything
all.
was thought out. I have seen interviews with Kojima before where he said that he wanted it to be like a cinematic experience. He wanted to create a Hollywood movie that you could play through. So everything is so well thought out. I mean, they were almost sued by the guy, the director of Escape from New York. Was that the film? Because Iroquois Pliskin is the name of the main character,
Yeah.
and they had the same name, similar type of character. Kurt Russell was in talks to do the voice at one point. It's set in very similar places. The whole thing with the eye patch, the character models. So Snake in part 2 has the eye patch, and Pliskin in part 2 has the part. Like it's very, very similar. But actually, there was someone on the staff who knew Kojima and said, "No, don't sue him. Like he's a great guy. It's a great game," and that's how he got away with it. But the copyright infringement is real. Like,
Well, he wants to be a director, doesn't he? He said that a lot of his games and everything are based on films, and he's
yeah.
been putting out a lot of tweets recently. Obviously, we're going off topic of Metal Gear Solid, but everyone's hoping for a Silent Hill game, and he was
Hmm.
originally going to bring one out, and then we got Death Stranding and blah 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 blah. But yeah, he
Oh,
always
PT drama.
PT. But he
Hmm.
always puts out films, and he always says there's nothing scarier than like really simple fears like darkness and stuff like that,
Yes.
and it shows through because like when you think of his character designs, they're often based off very kind of they're not entirely out of the box. I mean, a telekinesis person like that's been around for
Hmm.
ages. Someone who's really good at shooting, but he does it in such a way that it becomes like this mind-blowing thing. I don't know.
Yeah. He takes like
So
a simple fear and personifies it to the point where you're like, oh God.
Exactly. So exactly. So that's what I mean. He takes so much from films and TV, and his games just keep getting more and more like cinematic experiences. And I'm a huge fan of that. Like we said before in previous ones, I like my games to be serious. All right,
Yeah.
no fun.
Very
I like
serious gamer.
serious gamers. I like interactive, basically films almost. So
Yeah.
it's right up my street. So yeah.
Definitely. Everything is very dramatic in the right way. It's
Mm,
very over the top without being over the top. Do you know what I mean? It's OTT, but just enough to make it seem believable, which is what I
exactly.
appreciate. I mean, even if you spill into Metal Gear Solid 2, just very like a little bit, which we'll cover in a separate podcast because that is a whole game in itself. When you think about all the iconic villains of the Metal Gear franchise, when you think about Psycho Mantis, when you think about Sniper Wolf, when you think about Liquid himself, then you
Mm,
start thinking about the Metal Gear 2 ones. When you think about Fortune, when you think about Vamp, like all of them are outlandish characters that shouldn't really exist in this quote unquote normal world that he's created, but it does, and it doesn't seem too much. It seems cinematic, it doesn't seem stupid, which I
yeah.
think is such a talented thing to be able to do to make that believable,
Mm,
make the unreal real, you know.
yeah. It's true. It's
He's a
true.
good guy, old Kojima. He knows what
He
he's
is.
doing.
He's a clever lad who
Clever
needs
lad.
to. Come on, man. Just bring some more stuff out. I can't get enough of these games. I love it.
Just fucking remake Metal Gear. Thanks.
End podcast.
End podcast. Thanks for listening. Um, well, actually, I've just looked at the timer. We've come to kind of roughly the end, I think,
Yeah, around that.
around that.
What I would say though before we sign off,
Hmm.
codec out, is for
Oh,
anyone.
good.
Yeah, we need to get some sound effects for this.
We need to get some sound effects. We'll get the whole little like that. Yeah, we'll do that.
But I don't have such a bad like attempt.
That's how
But
we'll
if
start this podcast off with a ring.
yeah, if anyone's never played the first Metal Gear Solid, then definitely play it.
One, where have you been?
Yeah, one, where have you been? If you're
Hmm.
like, yeah, if you like sort of tactful games, tactical games, that's it.
Tactical.
Tactical games, um, stealth, and just like really kind of crazy but not that crazy story. Go for it. Like I can't
But
say anything else. It's good.
But can I even just say, even if you don't like tactical games, because I wasn't, I
Mm.
mean, when I first played it, I was a kid, I was like 8 years old. I didn't want to play a tactical spy game. I was all about action and racing and platformers and stuff. But it was so, maybe it's like a hazard of the time of what games were out. But still, it was so different. And I still believe now it's very different. You can
Yeah,
chuck whatever money into a budget of a game that you want, but it's still that ingenuity is still something that's only in the Metal Gear franchise and I haven't really seen anywhere else. So even
yeah,
if you're not a lover of tactical snipers and stuff like that, give it a go because it's something special. Even though it's like what, over 20 years old now, 98,
yeah.
so
It's
like
like 22
22 years old.
years. To be
It's
fair, I think like if I could put myself in a position where like I'd never played it before, and I would love to experience it
yeah,
first
for the
time
first
again
time.
because I
Hmm.
feel like even with its graphics, like quote unquote, it's still looks good,
Yeah,
and the colors still pop really good. It sounds brilliant, and I kind of wish I could experience it again. But obviously, I'm glad I've kind of grown up with the games and understand things and have the memories and stuff. But I do kind of wish I could play it for the first time.
yeah, I do too. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah,
There's so many events. You do one bit that just keeps playing over in my mind, and it's not even like a very dramatic moment or anything. But there's the there's the bit you just finish a fight, and for the life of me, I can't remember what fight you finished. You just finish a fight with somebody, and then you leave the base and you go round into the Arctic parts, the snowy tunnel, and you're walking through it. And if you haven't noticed this before, you then get a codec call, and someone says, "There's a bomb on your equipment. Throw it away." And then you open up your inventory, and there you find a bomb that's been planted into your thing,
yeah,
and you don't have to get rid of it at that moment. You can keep it, blow up and die. You can throw it and use it as a bomb, or if you noticed it from the very get-go, you can get rid of it and your codec call will change. And that's another thing, actually, just for myself to mention, is the multiple choiceness of it all. So
Yeah.
this game is one of the first, I think, of its gaming generation to have like quite a few multiple moments. So if you get rid of the bomb yourself, your codec call changes to the fact with, wow, you found something in your equipment. Where if you don't find it, you get the call of get out. You get a call from Grey Fox, don't you? And it's all like static. It's like there's something in your back or
It's
pack or
Deep
whatever.
Throat.
Deep Throat, yeah, who ends up
Deep
being
Throat.
Grey Fox, isn't that right? Spoilers.
No, it's fine.
so, so you get the phone call, which is quite cool. But then there's also the fact that during the torture scene, if you submit to the torture, Meryl dies and you unlock the camo suit at the end. Or if you don't submit to the torture, Meryl lives and you get the bandana, which gives you unlimited
Ammo.
weaponry. Ammo, yep. But it's littered with moments like that where you can change the outcome, which again I just think is really cool and wasn't really around too much back then. So
Yeah, there was never like a game with multiple endings that I can think of. It was
I
always
don't think
very
so.
kind of
I mean,
straightforward, wasn't it?
and even the multiple endings that were around, or multiple moments, if you like, the only one I can compare it to, really, off the top of my head, is the first Resident Evil. I know they had
Yeah.
quite a few moments, but it wasn't as many moments as Metal Gear.
I find those games though are almost very familiar, like very similar
Yeah,
in
I'd
the
agree.
sense of kind of the thing where people are sort of bio weapons, you know, like
Hmm.
they are in Metal Gear Solid, they are in Resident Evil. You have like the kind of the two characters, like you've got the Meryl, you've got Snake, then you've got like Chris and Jill. Like they
You have
all
a
kind of have
companion character.
exactly.
You're
They all
solving a mystery.
yeah. The only thing I think Snake doesn't have on that is Snake himself.
Yeah.
Metal Gear Solid is like the puzzles and stuff, but it does still have puzzles because there's the situation with the key card that you have to heat up and make cold and stuff like that. So there is
Oh
puzzles,
yeah, I
but
forgot about that.
I
Yeah,
feel
yeah.
like I feel like Resident Evil, Metal Gear Solid almost kind of share a lot in common, and they're
I think
both
they do.
brilliant. So
I think if you're a fan of one, you will be a fan of the other. I think that's something that's like clear
yeah,
to say. I wouldn't rattle a lot of people by saying that. Like
mm.
if you're a fear of Resi, you're probably going to be a fan of Metal Gear and vice versa because there are so many. They're similar enough and different enough. They are
Yeah,
completely not the same game at all, like whatsoever. But there is so much in common that is just enough for most fans to be like, do you know what? They do it for me,
yeah. When
and
you
they do.
think
They're two of my
outside the
favorites.
box, yeah, they are. Now, like obviously, I've actually played Resident Evil.
Yeah.
I can kind of see the similarities more and things like that. So,
Hmm.
I just love it. That's a good
I
game.
think they share one thing we've spoken about before with Resident Evil is quite a literal game. We've had this discussion before how like
Yes.
you have to literally go to open the box, examine it, and then open it. And like to solve this puzzle, be very literal, read the inscription and do what it says. It gives you red herrings to think, how am I going to do that? When really it's the simplest solution, which is often the hardest solution. And Metal Gear is the same. Like even simple things like using your cigarettes to cause a smoke cloud so you can see lasers. You've got cigarettes. Cigarettes obviously produce smoke. That's not a mind blowing feature. And it's quite obvious, but the game doesn't tell you that. And I think Resi and Metal Gear both don't hold your hand.
Yeah.
They're like, figure it out, bye. Like,
Yeah.
and which I really appreciate. I'm that kind of a gamer. I look for satisfaction. That I look to be challenged and be like, oh, I solved that. I'm so bloody good.
Yeah.
Like, I look for that. So
Yeah.
that's why they both appeal to me.
Exactly. And I'm not very. I wouldn't say I'm like that well minded in that respect. Where like I will
You're
figure
not
things
puzzle
out.
inclined.
I'm not. I'm not. Yeah. I'm not very puzzle inclined. But I can appreciate a good puzzle. And
Hmm.
Metal Gear Solid and Resident Evil, I've got it going on.
You
I'm getting
have.
better.
You are getting better. You have improved. That sounds really condescending. Well
I know.
done.
Well done. It's bad. It's so bad. But I am getting better. But like, yeah, I totally agree. There's nothing better than figuring something out and feeling like an achievement from it. And you get that kind of reward. It's like risk and reward, isn't it? It's really
Yeah.
heavy in Resident Evil and it's really heavy in Metal Gear Solid. So,
Yeah.
mm,
Brilliant. Lovely.
great.
Well, I think our time is actually coming to an end. So that's it. Well, very simply, just final thing. Do you want the remake? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Me too. Okay. That's it. We'll get on
Cheers,
that.
Koji.
Please, Koji, if you could just get on that and let me know. Maybe just give me a text and let me know when you're done.
Yeah,
And
just
then
give us a call. We'll give you some hints. Like,
yeah,
if you
give
need
us a
any
bell.
help, we're here.
Just tweet us at TG Breakdown and casual plug. Just tweet us at TG Breakdown. Let us know when you finish the remake. Hideo.
Just give us a follow
Thanks.
as well.
Yeah, just like and subscribe. Give us a rating on the Apple Store and on Spotify. But I'm sure Kojima's done that already.
Of
He's
course
such
he
a
has.
friend of the pod.
He loves us.
Right, guys. Well, it's now clocking up a lot of time, so we will see you in the next one when we may even discuss Metal Gear 2. I'm in
Thanks
the
for
Metal Gear mode now.
listening. Yeah, I
Yeah,
am.
let's do it then.
Let's do it.
Right.
Catch you next time.
Next time, right? See you later.
Bye.
Bye.